Good evening. I'm Tamara Dirksen, co-creator and facilitator of this series. To those returning, thank you for continuing the journey with us. And to those joining for the first time, we're so glad you're here. Last night, we welcomed a diverse audience of survivors, frontline service providers, advocates, government partners, and community members, and we're grateful to each of you for being part of this conversation. If you missed session 1, Alex will share a few takeaways in the chat. And before we begin, we'd love to start with a quick poll to see who was with us last night and where you're joining from. Over to you, Alex.
I just launched the poll. So do you see it on the screen?
I see it on the screen and I see some responses coming in.
Excellent.
Oh, quite a lot of folks were with us yesterday for session 1. Thank you so much. And I'm not seeing all of the options, Alex, so maybe you can help me. Oh, actually, I see. I was able to expand it. So far, 88% were with us for session 1. That's fantastic. Thank you. And to our newcomers, thank you for joining us. And where you're joining from, we have most folks are coming to us from central Canada, so Ontario and Quebec. We also have some joiners from Atlantic Canada, fantastic. Western Canada, where I grew up, close to my heart. And as well, I know we have folks from outside Canada as well, including a couple of our panelists. So that's terrific.
I'll end the poll now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is awesome. All right, so in session 1 last night, we explored the realities of human trafficking, the myths, systems, and vulnerabilities that enable exploitation. Tonight, we move from awareness to restoration, exploring what recovery can look like, how survivors rebuild their lives, and how communities can walk alongside them with dignity and hope. I'm joining you this evening from the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples covered by Treaty 13 and the Williams Treaties. We honor Indigenous peoples as the original stewards of this land, and we recognize that ongoing systems of exploitation continue to fuel trafficking today. May our work together move us toward reconciliation, justice, and freedom for all. Before we begin, just a few notes. Tonight's discussion includes experiences related to trafficking and trauma. Please take care of yourself and step away if needed. We'll open the Q&A later in the session. When we do, you'll be able to submit questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. This session is being recorded and the replay will be public. Replays, partner links, and resources will be available in the Resource Hub at uprootingtrafficking.com. If you experience any technical issues, please try rejoining through your registration link. And if you hear something that resonates with you, please feel free to use all of those emojis at your disposal. We're grateful for the partnership of the Federated Women's Institutes of Canada and for WI members joining us tonight. Now, before I continue, I just want to make sure that we have Councillor Lily Cheng with us at this point. If someone can confirm for me.
She's here.
Hi, Tamara.
Terrific. Thank you so much for joining us. We are honored to welcome the Mayor's Champion to Eradicate Intimate Partner and Gender-Based Violence, Councillor Lily Cheng, who represents Ward 18, Willowdale, on Toronto City Council. Since her election in 2022, Councillor Cheng has continued her long-standing work in community safety and collective care. In 2023, her advocacy was instrumental in moving the City of Toronto to declare gender-based violence and intimate partner violence an epidemic, advancing coordinated cross-sector action to support safety and dignity for those most impacted. We are so grateful to have Councillor Cheng with us this evening to share a few words of welcome and support. Please join me, and I see all the emojis coming up, in extending a warm welcome to Councillor Cheng. Councillor, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Tamara, and thank you to the Federated Women's Institute of Canada for this opportunity to share with you. But, you know, really, this is a moment for me to also learn more about you and your work. And I have to say that, you know, sometimes I think my job is hard, but I think your job is harder because you hold space for people who are going through tremendous difficulty. And for many, you are the light at the end of the tunnel that they have been praying for, hoping for. And sometimes I'm sure they're, you know, it's as with working with any difficult situations, you take a few steps forward and then there's a few steps back. And staying encouraged, I think, is really key to being able to continue the important work that you do, and also the importance of self-care and not burning out. And because I know that it can feel like you're bailing water and the ship is sinking sometimes. So I just want to thank you. Thank you for standing in the gap. Thank you for holding space. Thank you for bearing the heaviness of the work. And when you see the trauma, I'm sure it is so much to hold for your own spirits. And I hope that you have really good support and are taking care of each other in this very important battle that we have to fight together. So yes, in 2013, Toronto City Council, we took a firm stand condemning the horrific crime of human trafficking and committing to work collaboratively to support survivors, whether of sexual exploitation or labor trafficking. And since then, we've continued to strengthen our response, including essential services like emergency shelter, transitional housing funding, and prioritizing rent geared to income housing for survivors alongside emergency social assistance and health services. And the Toronto Police Service Human Trafficking Enforcement Team also plays a role in enforcement, outreach, and education. We know that the victims of trafficking, of sexual exploitation, are predominantly women and girls, and that this issue is deeply intertwined with gender-based violence. I'm proud that in July, we took the step of declaring intimate partner violence and gender-based violence to be an epidemic. And since that time, I worked across council, police service board, and the Board of Health to strengthen the city's support for survivors and improve our data collection to guide our efforts. These initiatives include requesting the Toronto Police Service to disaggregate crime data by gender, creating an interdivisional working group to align priorities across city divisions, and introducing an annual IPV and GBV report to the Toronto Police Service Board, the first of which will be presented next Thursday. Most recently, I moved a motion to develop a citywide public education campaign in 2026 and 2027 to highlight resources and prevent violence, gender-based violence, before it occurs. At the Board of Health, I've also requested that we explore adding an intimate partner violence indicator to the city's population health status dashboard, ensuring we continue to track and respond to this epidemic with evidence and accountability. And we know that so much of this is so invisible. So we have to be very proactive about finding ways to capture data so that we can communicate how horrific it is that this continues. And I'm happy to have further discussions with all of you who are frontline workers, as well as advocates, to explore how we can strengthen our city's response in supporting human trafficking survivors and efforts to prevent this horrific crime. Each of us has a role to play, and again, I am so grateful for your advocacy, your tireless work. I know many of you go way beyond your job descriptions because you see the frailty and vulnerability of the people you serve. And it is because you deeply care that you're here today and that you continue to do the work. And I look forward to further discussions with you. And together we can build a safer city, especially for women and girls, where women and girls can live to their potential, free of violence and exploitation. So I look forward to having further discussion with you. And I do apologize, I can't stay for the whole evening because we are hosting a community viewing of the Blue Jays game tonight. So I have to just, yeah, I have to work on that as well tonight. But I'm here and I would love to be your bridge to City Council, to the city, to see how we can coordinate better. And I do believe that we are stronger together. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I can just see the emojis going up. We are so appreciative, Councillor Cheng, for having you here tonight and for all of your tireless efforts in championing this important issue within the City of Toronto. And we're very proud to have you on City Council. And you mentioned several things, including how important it is, partnerships and advocacy, and very much appreciate the uplifting message that you've given to our frontline workers and organizations who are attending this call. So thank you for being here, and thank you so much for your leadership in advancing coordinated action on gender-based violence across our city.
Thank you. And I do look forward to further explorations of how we can strengthen our work together.
Thank you very much. And last words, go Jays, go. That's a very, very important other cause that you'll be supporting.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
thank you. All right. So moving along, that was very inspirational. Tonight, we turn our focus to restoration and reintegration, what healing and renewal can look like after trafficking, and how communities can help make that possible. We are sorry that Tamia Nagy is unable to attend as she's ill tonight. Tamia is an advocate, author, and founder of Tamia's Cause, and you will see a link to TC Online Institute in the Resource Hub. And I must do a plug. I must, because this is so important, to Tamia's book. So if you have an opportunity to read it, it will provide you with so many insights with respect to Tamia's journey as a survivor, and also at the beginnings of her healing journey that are covered off in the book as well. We are also joined by a powerful group of advocates and practitioners who work every day to support survivors in their journey towards stability, belonging, and lasting freedom. And it is my great privilege to introduce our panelists. First, we welcome Ashley Gaudry. A survivor and advocate with Fight for Freedom, Ashley uses her lived experience to educate others, raise awareness, and support survivors through trauma-informed training and prevention initiatives. Welcome, Ashley.
Thank you.
Next, we're joined by Jessica Ortiz, International Associate Director with Fight for Freedom. Jessica oversees survivor care and outreach efforts, helping to strengthen the organization's global response to trafficking and ensure that every survivor is met with empathy and hope. Welcome to you, Jessica.
Thank you so much.
We're also honored to welcome Ishani Slocombe, co-creator of the Uprooting Trafficking series. Ishani is a Canadian based in the Philippines working with Aftercare International and Consider the Lily to support survivor restoration and reintegration. She walks alongside women as they rebuild their lives through holistic healing, vocational pathways, and spiritual mentorship.
Thank
Welcome,
you.
Ishani. Joining us as well is Janae Gomez, Director of Anti-Human Trafficking Programs with the Salvation Army Illuminate. Janae leads transformative initiatives that disrupt cycles of exploitation and restore dignity to survivors through education, intervention, and survivor-centered care. Welcome, Janae. And finally, we welcome back Monica McIntyre, founder and director of Lifeline Mental Health and Aftercare International. Monica is a trauma-informed clinician and program designer supporting survivor aftercare across international settings, integrating neuroscience, ethics, and compassion to foster sustainable healing. I know we've already seen all the emojis, but please join me in welcoming tonight's panelists as we explore the many pathways to restoration and reintegration. So, Ashley, I'm going to start the discussion with you. Welcome again. So,
Thank you.
from your own journey, Ashley, what was the most supportive in your healing that you wish more communities understood?
Thank you for having me. Just a little bit about myself. I am a survivor. I was trafficked 3 separate occasions before the age of 17. Once by my mother, another person by picking me up from school, and then a boyfriend. So this is so long ago, and so I'm so happy to be a part of this because when I was 17, there was not a lot of this kind of support. So to be part of this, it's really nice. So for me, what I think communities can do, and I want them to understand is that the main thing is that rescue is not the end of the story. A lot of the time, they think for survivors, it's we rescued you, you're safe, and everything is okay. It doesn't work like that, and I think that that's the biggest piece, and it's just the beginning. And I think that what comes next is really where the healing will come from, and it'll start to happen. And I think that for me, it started with safety. So not just physical safety, but emotional safety. So, a lot of programs, they rush into like therapy or reintegration right away. And I think that that didn't happen for me until I felt safe. And that meant safe by the community around me and, the people that I had to get to trust after. And so I think that, from my own experience, communities need to ask the right questions to survivors. A lot of the time we're faced with, why didn't you leave? And I think that's a really hard question, and it kind of leaves the shame on us and less on the trafficker, right? And so I think that, communities need to have, understand that every situation, every survivor's situation is complex and it's so different and it's individualized. And I think that being equipped with the right questions is just it goes a long way. And that starts with education and things like this, because this is where you'll learn what to ask a survivor, I think. And I think that, it's healing takes time, and I think communities and your team that you start to develop over time, it's just about being on your side. And I think that, they need to know the language, the trigger language, the trauma language around this. And I think that's what helps to support survivors around social settings again, or boundaries, or just basic day-to-day tasks that we come out of these situations and we're like, we're just boring basically. So it's rebuilding us from the beginning. And I think that as you know, a survivor, and when you're being trafficked, your control is taken away from you. So I think that, you know, communities need to slowly be able to allow us to have our own choices, to empower us to, because empowerment is the opposite of exploitation. So I really believe that that empowerment, those people behind you really make a difference. And most of the people that worked with me when I was 17 still work with me today. So it's really about following us through our journey, because it is so up and down. And it doesn't ever leave us, it stays with us. And so I think that what helped me the most was those people, you know, not afraid to tell me that, you know, I was free and I wasn't alone anymore. And, you know, I just think that advocacy is a huge important piece to that. So communities having other advocates who have been through the same thing, who are also survivors, who can, you know, replace that stigma with understanding, because it's hard for people to understand if you haven't been through it. So I feel like by having a strong community around you builds advocacy, and it builds us survivors to want to be able to give back and to help. And so I think that, you know, it just that's basically what I think. That's it, really. That's what I think. I could go on, but that's what I really think the most important thing is, that rescue is not the end of the story, and we need to continue with the care and the advocacy with survivors.
Thank you so much, Ashley, for your vulnerability in sharing that. And oh, there's so much I'd like to dig in on, but I want to make sure that we get through all the panelists and then through the audience Q&A as well first. But you know, multiple things you said, but the safety, it starts with safety. Healing takes time, the importance of getting choices back, and the importance of community as well.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you.
So I believe the Q&A is open, so you can feel free to start popping questions in there that will be answered at the end. So Jessica, I'd like to invite you into the conversation now. Based on your work, what's one shift communities could make today that would help survivors reintegrate more successfully?
Thank you again, Tamara, for allowing me to participate this evening. It's such an honor. I think one of the most powerful shifts communities can make is simply to be open to change, open to conversations, and open to learning. Reintegration isn't just about providing resources, it's about creating spaces where survivors are truly seen and heard and valued. And I just love what Ashley was sharing about, because I think that I was just thinking, not only being open to learning and open to conversations, but open to seeing people. And sometimes I think we just get so caught up in the day-to-day things and always on the phone or always on the go. And it's like, sometimes we just need to stop and be present and look around. And you can see when someone is going through something, or someone is hurting, or someone is not acting as usual or normal, their normal selves. And I think sometimes just pausing to stop and ask, how are you doing? And actually being ready to listen to the answer, and having that curiosity and having that interest in people of of genuine concern. I think if communities did that more, you would see that there can be true integration for survivors to come in, because like Ashley was saying, they want to feel safe, they want to feel like people have their back, they want to feel like people are in their corner, right? And that they can share what's going on with them. And so I think just asking the right questions, asking how are you, and wanting to know the answers and being ready for that, I think is huge. And I think that in my own experience, being able to check in with people in my own neighborhood and community, and people being interested in the kind of work that I do, it's great because then you can collaborate. Then you can find ways to help each other, right? And here's just a concrete example. I started to frequent this cafe in my neighborhood, and I asked, hey, can I have my birthday celebration here? And they're like, yeah, sure, why not? And in that birthday celebration, I talked about what I did with Fight for Freedom, and it opened up an avenue for us to collaborate through art, through music, through different events, so that people are understanding and having more awareness of what trafficking really looks like in our communities and how we can respond. And one of the cool things, last thing I think I'll talk about, is that in one of our collaborations, I remember attending a Walk for Freedom with Fight for Freedom a couple years back, and there was this cool cafe that had this Pay It Forward program where they would people would be able to buy buttons, and then people would be able to pay with buttons for their coffees or teas or meal. And I said, this is so cool. And I was like, why can't we do something like that here in my neighborhood? And they were open to that. And instead of using buttons, we used just prepaid gift cards, so that people can use that to pay for a meal or a warm drink. And they, like I think about the single mothers that come in with their children, and they have to choose, like, do I feed them or do I feed myself? And sometimes just little things like that can help a community thrive, can help survivors feel safe and valued and seen and heard. And so, yeah, that's basically what I was going to say. There's so much more, but I know that I want to hear other people too.
That's fantastic. I love that story. Thanks for sharing that, Jessica. And what I found really so much interesting, but that theme of collaboration and community comes up again and again and again as we're having these discussions. And what you said too about stopping, being present, looking around. In the context of this discussion about restoration and reintegration, it's the same thing that came up in session 1 yesterday.
Yes.
When we talk about looking for the signs. It's like, look
Yes.
up, pay attention, take interest, ask people how they're doing, watch
Yes.
for things that may sort of seem off and not sort of how they normally would be, different behaviors, that sort of thing. So another common theme that we're seeing as well. So thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much. Yeah.
More that I'd like to dig in on, but this is not about me. This is about just hearing from our panelists and our audience. So thank you. Next, I'd love to hear from you, Monica. So I'm going to bring you on. Here we go. From a trauma-informed perspective, what misconceptions have you come across, Monica, that are common about life after trafficking? And how can service providers and communities work together to change the narrative?
Thank you. Tamara, can you hear me? Yes, sorry, we're good. Okay. Thank you. And like Jessica, I'm very honored to be here, and thank you for having me. So I wear 2 hats, running Aftercare International, which is seeing this work from many different cultures and countries, to being a clinician myself. That was the purpose, to be able to support survivors. I took a U-turn in my life when I discovered this existed, and I decided to give all of my being to it. So I'm going to answer with both hats on at this point, but from a trauma perspective, I think piggybacking on what Ashley said, we made it and forgive me, I don't know if this is the right term, I'm translating, our tagline, our motto in Aftercare International is rescue brings liberation. Aftercare provides freedom. When we have to explain, because we work a lot with actual individuals who provide the rescue, whether it's a soft rescue or a hard rescue, we always say that is a moment in time, and then we've got a lifetime, and that's aftercare. And like Ashley said, it's ongoing. It's it has ups and downs, and it's like, you know, it's like grief. It goes everywhere, it comes down, it can show up with one face one day, the next one the other one. And it's something that is definitely, we need to understand that it is not a quick fix. So from different places, I think the main misconception is the definition of healing and how it's implemented. Those would be the two main things that I've noticed: healing and its implementation. So I would say three main things about healing. The first one is it's lifelong. Rescue and freedom for survivors of trafficking is only the beginning, like we're saying. Healing is not automatic. It is a lifelong process. It takes time, consistency, and the kind of presence, to Jessica's point, the kind of presence that can hold both patience and hope at the same time. Every survivor's journey looks unique and totally different. And that's why our work must always remain disciplined, flexible, and deeply human. The second thing I think is that is a misconception about healing is that it's an art. You know, aftercare is not a formula. It demands a toolbox full of evidence-based trauma-informed interventions, and I put that "and" in cap locks, and the intuition to listen with your heart. So you cannot rely on love alone, and you cannot rely on credentials alone. Both are essential. You never want to see people working with love without qualifications. That can be very dangerous. And you also don't want to see very qualified individuals who have lost their humanity and operate on a checklist, you know, instead of compassion. There is no checklist for healing. There isn't. And the third one is love is the foundation for healing. You know, all these letters and all these courses and everything, I always argue with everybody, and that's a strong word, but it is like, yeah, this is all great. If love doesn't fill 80% of what you bring to the plate and to the table with that soul that is sitting in front of you, is going to be very hard for them to feel safe again. So our work requires humility, competence, accountability, and love. Put that with cap locks, every single day. I'm a fan of Bruce Perry, Dr. Bruce Perry, and his neurosequential model of trauma, complex trauma. And he reminds us that healing happens in relationships. It happens in relationships. It is not one program or one person that changes a life, but the steady, trustworthy presence of safe, caring connections over time. So love has to be the foundation. What kind of love? The love where somebody feels seen, the love where somebody feels safe, the love where somebody feels important, and mostly of all, the love where they feel loved. Not to be redundant, but so yes, when service providers and communities come together, grounded in knowledge, in heart, and in shared responsibility, we move from rescuing to truly walking alongside survivors. That's where freedom and healing began to take root.
That was so inspiring, Monica. Thank you for that. And what resonated with me is so much, but that like grief aftercare is a journey. We know we have all gone through. We may not may not have the lived experience of human trafficking, but all of us, I believe, or most of us, have gone through the grief journey, and we know that it has its up and downs and ebbs and flows, and it is lifelong as well. And I think that's important to remember. And I'm going to get a sticker that says, you know, love with cap lock, because I think that was fantastic. So thank you so much for sharing those sentiments with us. All right, next, I'm going to move along to Ishani, because I'd love to get your perspectives next. So, Ishani, you've seen survivor reintegration in very different contexts. What models have been most effective in your experience?
Thank you, Tamara. And I want to echo Monica's words. Love is at the core of all that we do in this journey. And the love has to continue, even in the integration phase. And as a Canadian living here in the Philippines, or just have moved here under a year, with my observation working with minors as young as 5 years old, my observation in the last year living here has been the model that has worked the best when we talk about reintegration is where there's an in transitional phase that can last between 3 to 6 months, where survivors go from restoration to full independence, but walking that journey with them. And what does that look like? It's more or less like a structured living space, but supervised, where they still get to experience that independence in living the real life before they fully transition into society. So I'd like to break it down into four buckets, which is learning and applying, which is applying the skills they have learned, building confidence through practice, so they're able to apply the skills, the life skills they've learned through the restoration process, residential care, and now applied while living independently in the structured environment, supervised environment. Number two is work to earn, so where they're in stable jobs and they're able to earn they have financial stability, they're able to earn, they're able to set themselves up financially before they move into total independence. Third one is, and I echo Ashley and Jessica's words about belonging and growing, finding a healthy community and support, a safe place. Survivors are encouraged to engage in positive community groups here with local churches, small groups, have mentors, or alumni gatherings that they're a part of, to build their support system when they're out there living this life of independence. These communities provide emotional support, spiritual nourishment, and accountability as survivors continue to walk this journey. And the final piece is thrive and sustain, which is walking in freedom and stability, where each woman continues to receive guidance from a staff member that does regular check-ins, making sure they're okay with their jobs, making sure their emotional well-being is well taken care of, and just making sure that they're preparing for their own integration plans, as in their long-term goals like housing, permanent housing, what the employment career path looks like, what does the community goals look like? What do they want to get involved with? So helping them develop their own integration plan as they plan for total integration. And really, the outcome from this phase is moving from dependence to sustainable freedom. And I believe from this transitional phase, young women gain real world confidence going through this transitional phase. They achieve financial stability. They learn how to manage their financial situation better. They establish healthy community connections before they're on their own, independently on their own, and they develop a sustainable lifestyle plan already ready to live out in this structured environment, and they get to transition with dignity and purpose. So that's the best model I've seen that's worked really well, having that transitional phase, or phase as I would call it, that could last from 3 to 6 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Ishani. I was making mad notes. That's why I was looking down here. I loved what you said about the dependence to sustainable freedom. And you talked about how what came across to me is it's a thoughtful and deliberate journey to make sure that it's sustainable and it's supported by community. We hear again the community as being so very important, and to be able to transition with dignity and purpose. I love
That's
that.
right.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Again,
Thank
so much to dig into there. So now I'm going to keep going. Let's keep going. And I'm going to move to you, Janae. And such a privilege to have you here. We're both with the Salvation Army. So, Janae, what are the biggest barriers survivors of sex trafficking face when trying to reintegrate in Canadian communities?
Hmm. Yeah, so yeah, I'll say again, real pleasure to be here. Most of the panelists I don't know, but just hearing you all share, I like Tamara keeps saying, there's so much to dig into, all the different things that everyone is sharing. But sex trafficking survivors specifically can be faced with such a unique host of issues that we don't tend to find, I feel like, in other forms of abuse or exploitation. And there's so many things, you know, we could all list them out: complex trauma, trauma bonding, substance abuse, financial debt, all the things, right? And they're not barriers that are necessarily specific to sex trafficking survivors, but there's almost like a unique blend of difficulties that survivors are left with. It is quite unique. And the effects of exploitation, sexual exploitation specifically, and you know, I'm sure as most of you have experienced, it can bleed into so many different areas of a survivor's life. We have so many government, non-government intervention strategies to address some of the critical issues like homelessness, addiction, mental health, etc. But what we have found is that there's just a huge gap of survivor-centered supports specifically. And this has been a significant barrier to reintegration. So yeah, survivors' worldview is really, it's shattered, right? So their ability to trust, to dream, to navigate complex social systems especially is often very limited. And it doesn't mean that they're broken or incapable. The opposite is typically true. They're more intuitive and they're more resourceful, but their reality has been one of survival. And that changes how they engage with society, and it changes how society engages with them as well. Most of our societal systems aren't really designed for exceptions, right? For the exception. The scope of service or the requirements for particular agencies or field of service can be so rigid. So I'll give you just a quick example of that. We recently were working with a survivor who was brought to Canada from another country by a family, and she was brought here and settled here under an alias, fake name. Actually, it wasn't a fake name; it belonged to somebody else, so somebody else's identity. But when she arrived here, it was her biometrics, so somebody else's name, somebody else's birth date, but her fingerprints, essentially, in the Canadian system. Once everything came out, you know, charges were laid, everything, you know, kind of came out and happened. And she was given the opportunity to apply for residency in Canada through her own name, her own identity. And then it was denied. And there was two main reasons. And they were both, it was just about the rigid, like how rigid our systems can be. There was no precedent for it, but the main thing was that her biometrics were already in the system under a different name. Even though they know that that's not her, they can't recreate just because her fingerprints are in our government system under a different name, which is really, really silly. Because now we have this survivor who has two options. One, she can continue to live under her true identity and not have access to healthcare and not have a work permit. And, you know, it changes her age. So it changes what services are available to her, all those kinds of things. Or she can assume her permanent residency, her old identity that ties her to the family that trafficked her. And then she has that name and she has, you know, so it's just like neither of the situations are good. Taking it outside of the matter of, you know, services and stuff, just to ordinary situations every day, applying for a job, applying for housing, you know, there's going to be certain boxes that need to be checked. And while many groups of individuals have to deal with the challenges of, you know, having gaps in their resume or a lack of housing references, survivors specifically are continuously put in situations where their explanation for why is a retelling of their trauma. So even if they choose to change the details or to speak about it vaguely, anytime they're asked why or anytime the question of why comes up, even if they don't say it out loud, they know why. And so they're constantly just refaced again with, you know, their exploitation and what has happened. And that kind of leads to the second biggest barrier that we see. So the first is this survivor-centered supports, but the second is stigma. Sex trafficking survivors specifically endure a significant amount of stigma that, you know, from the general population, typically, you know, viewed as immoral through a lens of like sex work, which just isolates and compounds shame and social displacement. And it's not just the stigma of having been a sex worker, which for most of them, it invalidates their true experience because they probably weren't sex workers, but the stigma related to all the other areas of their lives that were affected. So whatever it could be, right? Criminal charges, legal history, addiction, homelessness, estrangement, lack of education, lack of traditional milestones. And while there's been so many like campaigns and training and initiatives and things, and we've come a really long way with myth busting and defining what sex trafficking is, and more importantly, highlighting the resilience and the faultlessness of survivors, there are still really deep-rooted misconceptions and stereotypes that persist. I will say personally, most survivors that I have met, all survivors that I have met, have the perseverance and the grit to overcome multiple barriers. But when you combine that with, you know, the hurdles that they have to get through are amplified through stigma, societal stigma, and the lack of trauma-informed care, it makes reintegration a very, very steep journey.
Thank you so much, Janae, and that's a lot to unpack as well. What you said though about survivors being more intuitive and resourceful and faultless, and the perseverance and the grit, but then having to overcome these hurdles. And I really appreciate that story that you told. It's an impossible place to be, to have to make those decisions under very difficult circumstances. So thank you very much for sharing that. All right, so thank you. We've seen all the emojis. Give them more emojis, please, to our panelists for your insight and the depth of experience you've shared this evening. You've given us so much to think about, from frontline realities to the collective hope of restoration and change as well. So now we're going to move into our Q&A, and we know that I cannot see the Q&A right now. I haven't looked at it, but I'm sure there's quite a few things in there. And so we'll just get to probably just maybe 2 or 3 questions, but we will look at the questions and put whichever ones we can in a Q&A document on our resource hub, so that some of those that we don't get to in our live Q&A can be addressed. And so with that, I am going to pass it over to Ishani to lead her fellow panelists in our Q&A. Over to you, Ishani.
Thank you, Tamara. We have some of the questions I think we'll answer offline, just because of the nature of them. But there is one question, and I'm just wondering, maybe there's others that might have the same question. So it's for Financier to answer if she's able to. It says, I work in child protection and I struggle with how to empower survivors of sex trafficking when they're under the age of 16. And the laws in my province state that I need to remove them. If I remove them and place them in a group home, they may run back to the trafficker. I'm at a loss with how to service children under the age of 16.
Thank you so much, Ishani. By the way, my name is Fenicia Lewis Dowlin. I'm the Policy Development Officer for the City of Toronto that oversees the End Trafficking TO initiative. And I'm so proud and happy to have had our councillor here to kick off the session and to really share the remarks and everything that the City of Toronto is doing. In terms of that specific question that was just asked, it all depends on which province you're residing in. but for the province of Ontario and for City of Toronto that we live in and we represent currently, is the Toronto Police Services actually have a specific program called CARE, C-A-R-E. And that particular program, I believe Tamara may already be a resource link to your website. If not, I'll be sure to get that to you. And they focus on minors specifically that's being sexually exploited. And they can definitely address any concerns, any questions you have, because it is a huge problem and they're getting much younger and younger. And that's why that dedicated team by the Toronto Police Service has been able to really focus on that type of specific trafficking.
Thank you so much for your response. Tamara, if you at this time have a few questions you'd like to ask our panelists, that'd be great. I think you're on mute, Tamara.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm on mute. Sorry, all my paperwork
Actually,
here.
just as you get the questions, I'm going to put just Monica on the spot. Monica, there is a saying that you have about the analogies about the firemen. From rescue, it's not enough just to rescue. And I know Ashley touched on it. This whole journey is more than just rescue. There's more to be done. And I'm just wondering if you can share that analogy with us, Monica.
Yes, my English, I'm really struggling today with, bear with me and be imaginative as I tell you what the saying said. The saying says, you can't rescue someone from a fire and leave them in the ashes. And I think that's where our responsibility comes in aftercare. I think is understanding, and that that everybody heals at different timings. You know, the timing of healing is everybody's unique. And you just have to, continue to have patience and love and grit and be there. But yes, it's our duty to do more than pull them out of the fire.
Thank you,
so much,
Monica.
I'm wondering if we can spotlight Ashley. Can we bring Ashley back? I've got a question for you, Ashley.
Hi.
There we go. Hi, Ashley. So you said that empowerment is the opposite of exploitation. What are examples, Ashley, of small but meaningful ways that communities can help survivors rebuild a sense of control and choice in everyday life?
Oh, wow. That's they're small things. I mean, just for an example, some of the ways that I felt empowered when I was younger, it was just simply being taught how to do my laundry. And that was something so small that I never knew how to do. So, I mean, empowering me to know that I could perform these tasks, because a lot of the time we're told, you know, in our trafficking days, that we're good for nothing and we can't do anything and nobody's going to love us and nobody, you know, you don't look this certain way, and all of these things that are told to us, and we end up believing them. So small little things that someone would tell me, oh, you look nice, or, you know, teaching me about a boundary, how to put up a boundary, how to brush my teeth. These are things that I didn't have any power over when I was. Somebody would tell me when to brush my teeth or when to dress or what to dress. And I think that just giving us that choice to be able to choose what, you know, outfit we want to wear for some of even my therapy sessions, those were important to me. Those taught me some sort of self-confidence afterwards. So I think that so giving us these choices to choose what we want to do and when we want to do it, and then that's important, I think. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much for sharing that, Ashley. That's really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Tamara, I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second.
Yes, please.
There was one specific question asked in this little session that I did. So because I mentioned that we deal with minors as young as 5 years old, the question was asked, how do you integrate teens back into, go through the integration phase? And that journey is long. So honestly, when they come in at 5 years old, we can't do we work with them, they get the education, they're with us for a long time. Until they're 18, we cannot talk to them about the transition phase or integrating them back because they're not adults. So unless according to the Philippines law, they have to be until they're 18, they're considered minors. So yes, the stay in the residential care is much longer. It's a longer process for them. And then after they're 18, we're able to have those conversations about extended education or what they want to do if they want to get into employment. Now, in the Philippines, to get jobs here is very hard unless you have a college degree. So we encourage a lot of the young girls to definitely pursue something in college and get something under their belt, advanced education, so that they can get jobs after that. So it is a longer process for someone as young as coming into our care at young as 15. Young as 5 years old.
Thank you very much, Ishani, for sharing that. I'm processing that. I'm processing what you just said and how long that journey is, and how that is a different journey. And I'm seeing a lot of hearts come up at that as well. So we're drawing to a close. So I wanted to thank everyone who shared questions tonight, to our panelists for your thoughtful responses. So much for us to reflect on as we leave this conversation tonight. And these conversations remind us that healing strengthens when we learn and act together. And with that, we'll begin to close the session, but don't leave yet. I wanted to thank our panelists for the work you lead every day and for sharing your experience with us. And just as the counselor said, we know that you're doing things well beyond your job description and helping others every day. We're so very grateful for that and for you. And thank you to each of you for being here. Your presence makes restoration possible. And as we look ahead to Thursdays, so not tomorrow, but Thursday's final session at 7 p.m. Eastern, Prevention and Community Response, we'll be joined by another incredible group of voices. And these will be voices working on the front lines of prevention and protection. So I just want to give you a little highlight of who will be joining us on Thursday. Staff Sergeant Gordon McDonald from Alberta's Alert Human Trafficking and Counter-Exploitation Unit, who leads investigations that protect those most at risk across southern Alberta. Inspector Colleen Bowers, who heads the Calgary Police Service's Youth Services section and has dedicated over 2 decades to child protection and exploitation prevention. Caitlin Bick, a survivor and advocate with Victim Services Toronto, who brings powerful lived experience and now trains others in trauma-informed survivor-centered care. And Peter Slocombe, a former Canadian law enforcement officer now working in the Philippines, leading rescue operations for minors and helping them rebuild their lives with safety and hope. You won't want to miss this final conversation. It's all about action, going back to that theme of collaboration again, and what we can do together to make a difference. So I'll leave you with one question, and I'll also just ask Alex if she can flash up the QR code that will take you to the Resource Hub if she has it handy. So I'll leave you with this question. What does restoration look like in your life, your community, or your work? Thank you again to our speakers, to the Federated Women's Institutes of Canada, and to all of you for being part of this growing movement. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We look forward to seeing you on Thursday. Thank you.